Good morning, everybody. Is it Saturday? Yes, it's Sunday today. I almost got mistaken. It's definitely Sunday. It's 11 o'clock and it's time for this really interesting live I'm going to do with Paul Wain, who works with men. Well, he works with everybody, let's just say. Everybody, men and women. But I suppose there's a specialism in that he's working particularly with men to offer them an opportunity to have a safe space for healing, as we, I think women are generally doing that a lot now, and men are doing that too, but perhaps not as much. And Paul has really started to offer an opportunity through his own journey. He realised that there was a necessity to support men through healing, through breakdowns, through divorce, through all sorts of things that we go through in life. And I had a wonderful conversation with him the other day. He's a very deep, metaphysical and thoughtful character who has so much to give. So much wisdom and knowledge there, and I really wanted to bring him in because I think he's such an incredible source of inspiration for people through his own journey, but also through the wisdom that he's able to create in other people's lives. I'm just going to say hello to everybody. Thank you all for joining. Thank you so much for joining. And so we've got Paul today, and I'm gonna bring him on. Here he is now. Oh, I've got some more people joining. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us and for getting out of bed this morning. Here's Paul. Go live. Sorry, forgot to press the button. I think he should be coming on now. Let's see what's happened. Here he is. Brilliant. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Jade. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yeah. I almost forgot what day it was this morning. I've had one of those really long, nice, relaxing weekends where you just forget whether is it still Saturday? It rolls all into one. I am very well. How are you?
Pretty decent, actually. This morning I've done the hoovering and the washing, and everything's fine. But it's also a beautiful day here, so I'm looking forward to getting out for a walk in a bit.
Yeah.
Get into the sunshine. But yeah, everything's cool here. We're good. I did last night go to see at the theatre the Book of Mormon, which was fascinating, in some places quite shocking, in some places quite awkward, but it does ask a lot of questions. And but yeah, really nice to get out to the theatre again and see something live, which is always great.
Get back into society.
Yes. Yeah.
What sort of questions was it asking you then?
Well, you wonder, you see the title, the Book of Mormon, and you think, well, it's meant to be funny. I don't know how that could be funny, but actually tying into this live, when I was watching it, I was the initial part of the play was there was a lot of putting down, there's a lot of suppression. It was a lot of male, sort of the Book of Mormon play. Is a sort of male-orientated sort of start to it. I have no idea what Mormon religion is like. It's nothing that sort of has drawn me in the past, but there was sort of a play on this sort of, you've got worries in your life, you push them down. You've got issues in your life of perhaps gender or sexuality, whatever, you push it down, and that theme continued for a little while, and then it sort of exploded into well, actually there was people questioning that. It was all very humorous, it was all quite musical, which was quite interesting, but there was a lot of questioning of it. this suppression. And I thought, well, that's a key. That's hopefully things, change as time goes on and people open up more. But yes, there was, it was what would you say? A metaphor, I think, for stuff that's going on. And certainly the way I interpreted it was, there was a reflection on men's mental health in it.
Right.
And there were some awkward characters, there were some awkward situations. And it was actually, it turned out actually just be yourself. And that was a lovely message towards the end of it. It was just let things go. That, that perhaps you've had a lifetime of learning, but let them go and move on to other, to what is the core of you, which is a great message.
So that ultimately is what you're offering men who need support. Let go. And
it is really
just be the core of you.
Yeah. I think my own journey, which when I look back at it, was one of, you had a great childhood, had a normal childhood, whatever normal is. I was outside the house most of the time, playing with my mates, and it was good fun. There was issues. There's stuff goes on, that my parents weren't wealthy at all. That, it was just a pretty normal working class sort of childhood where you played out in the street all the time or in the woods or wherever.
Best one.
So, yeah, pretty much. And you came in when your tea was ready.
Right. Yeah.
And your lunch was a jam piece. So yeah, and that sort of journey, and it developed into, I didn't realize at the time, but there was a sort of an element of anxiety and bullying that came in there because from sort of past history, family history, going backwards. The dog's come in to see me. That's nice.
Oh.
She must have been wanting to be part of the live.
They always do on these lives. The animals come in.
We'll say hello in a bit, perhaps. But yeah, that turned in, and as I went forward, I did an apprenticeship, became an engineer, played rugby, did skiing, I got married, had a family, had 2 great kids, and time moves on, and 42 years passes of work, and you retire, and all of a sudden you start to think, what am I all about? And I think I just imploded. And it was all about this suppression of things in the past, both through a sort of a family situation, plus like parental situations. And I think really that implosion, which led to sort of a nervous breakdown, it led to a separation in my marriage and very difficult and dark times. But I think I needed to strip away. I didn't realize at the time I needed to strip away a lot of the baggage and lift the lid on this pot that was boiling away inside of. And that was a bit of my reflection on the Book of Mormon. Was a lot of these guys suppressed a lot of stuff. They lifted the lid and they came out. And that journey for me, which probably started 30 years ago when I was first introduced to Reiki, that when I was around early 30s. And that sort of feeling of who am I? And then you go on to that journey then. So you do descend into this dark place. And I think a lot of men do, because they do not share. We are absolutely useless at sharing our thoughts, our feelings. And I think when I sort of imploded, the where I went to look for help started really with some counselling that I got. Very early on in that counselling, I realised the beauty or the value of being able to talk and have a voice. And that is massive in men. I think women tend to do it more, but there is also a need for that as well in all humans, I think.
Oh yeah.
For sure. The women tend to be better at it. So yes, I did seek some advice through counselling. I had 3 counsellors over the piece, and each of them gave me different things. But I realised very quickly in my first counselling sessions the value of being able to talk and be listened to and not be judged. And the old adage of, oh, there's no good or bad here. Let's just talk about what it is. And that was sort of quite a revelation for me. So that went on. I met a coach called James McCourt, who has been absolutely fantastic in once you take the lid off the pot and it starts to boil over, and all this stuff comes out. And James was great help for me, and I continue to be coached by him to this day, and will continue. And digging into that sort of inner bits that you really, really, really don't want anybody to see. And so James McCourt helped me to sort of dig in there. Again, there was no judgment. It was just a matter of, let's look at this stuff, because it's for blokes to be able to do that is just such a refreshing thing to do. So yeah, dug into all the crap which was in there. I then went on to join a group called Andy's Man Club. One of my counsellors, I was talking to her and saying, this is fantastic to be able to share, but we're coming to the end of our bit now. Where do I go from here? Where do I continue the conversation with somebody? And she'd heard of Andy's Man Club, and I attended, not really knowing what it was. And it was started by a guy's brother-in-law, a guy who committed suicide in his mid-20s because he didn't talk about stuff. So his brother-in-law started this group called Andy's Man Club, and went on to build a number of groups around the country, around the UK. Again, this was another occasion of being able to sit there, talk with a group of blokes about whatever you want to talk about. And I've seen some really dark things come out of there. However, what happens in that room is magic. Because when blokes do start to talk, they that moment when you first say, I was abused as a child, or I tried to commit suicide because my exam results were poor, or whatever. It isn't just that. There's other things as well. But that moment when that bloke mentions that, a little spark comes on. And then they can then start to develop that over time. But they need to do it themselves. I think one of your posts, or it was a reflection of one of mine, was Alice pulling back the curtain and looking behind it. And it's okay to pull back the curtain and to help people, but you yourself have got to walk through that. And it's important that you do, because it's your journey, nobody else's. So that was sort of me coming through this dark patch and coming out the other side, and helping other people to do that now is brilliant. It's a beautiful thing to see somebody come in all wizened and grey, and I don't mean physically but metaphorically, all wizened and grey, covered in cobwebs and life, because that's what life can do to you. And to be able to sort of get them to open their eyes and just see a spark of light, and then see them going away at some point later, whether it's 5 minutes or a longer period of time, with brightness, with hope, and with a realization of who they are, really, or the start of that realization of who they are. That, to me, is just beautiful. It's just a lovely thing. As you say, it's not just men, it's women as well, but women can. I think it's important for women to do it perhaps more formally than less, but I don't know. But for men, they just need the opportunity. They need to be in a safe space where they know they're not going to be judged. They know that what they say is not going to get shared to the world via the internet and, oh, did you hear what Jimmy said at the meeting the other night? It just doesn't happen. And if it did happen, men wouldn't open up. They need to be able to open up. You can't do it at the rugby club bar. You can't do it around the coffee machine in an engineering or a factory or whatever. It's a different place that needs to be done. So yeah, it's been a great journey doing this. And I think as I say, my journey probably started when I was a kid, through a little bit of bullying, a little bit of bad stuff that I did myself. God, a little bit more than a little bit of bad stuff, but and most of it I've faced and I've let go now. But until you do lift the lid, actually have a look what's inside that pot, take it out and hold it in your hand and realize, do you know what? I've been carrying this for 10 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever. I've been carrying this and it's heavy. I want to put it down now. And when you can realize that you are not the only one that's done these things, when you are just everybody's done them, and actually say, do you know what? That's all part of me. That is. You're allowed to do these things. You're allowed then to forgive yourself for doing these things, and be facing up to it, not pushing it down, bringing it up is part of that journey. I rambled on a lot there. Sorry.
No, fantastic. It's great. I've got two lovely souls who are saying it really resonates with them, and it's a great conversation, and it's fun. I'm loving it. What I wanted to ask you then, it's the initial judgment, is it? That's the main reason why maybe many men don't open up. Is it the fear of judgment? Being
that's huge.
That they've done or supposed to have done in their minds.
Without a doubt, that's huge. One of the things which James did with me a little while ago, we looked at what is the primary question. James has been a brilliant coach, by the way. If I like to big him up because he's done so much for me and for many others. But we looked at the primary question, and the primary question is, for me, was, am I worthy? And where did that come from? Because I had a great childhood. You know, how did I get to a point where am I worthy? I'm worthless. You know, so it's through comments of people. And you know, some people can write these questions out. Some people have different primary questions. So at some point or other, you've got to look at that. Am I worthy? I was one of 5 brothers. One of my brothers died in infancy, about 10 years before I was born. But my parent, the anxiety, I can't imagine losing a child. I have two kids. They're fantastic, and it sort of like touches me now. I sort of get a little bit emotional thinking about losing one of them. It would, as a parent, it would be an absolutely, possibly the worst thing that would ever happen to a parent is to lose a child. And we hear many times that this happens, and how do you deal with that? Now, my mum and dad were fantastic. They came through the war. They both served during the war. My dad lost his brother during the war. That would have been a trauma in itself. There was so they came out of the war. They got married. They had 2 kids in quick succession, and the second one died in the hospital. Now, my mother allowed that child to go to hospital to deal with something simple like nappy rash, which was daft. To our viewpoint now, you know, why do you send your kid to hospital to deal with nappy rash? And this was before the NHS. So the kid died in hospital through gastroenteritis. It was on a ward where I think there was 13 of the 18 kids on the ward died. They were all babies, died of gastroenteritis through lack of cleanliness, really. Now, my mum would have blamed herself. The guilt would have been there. My dad would have been distraught. I could imagine it would have been awful. And the guilt of sort of sending your child to hospital to be healed for it to then die, and she would have thought it was her fault. She probably carried that her whole life, I would suspect. So when my other brothers were born, there would have been an element of anxiety. You know, is this child going to be okay?
Yeah.
And so on. So I was the last one to be born. Oh, plus the fact that my mother had a number of miscarriages as well, and them in themselves, for a mother carrying a child to have a miscarriage is awful. You know, that feeling of carrying a life and then losing that life is awful. So that anxiety, without a doubt, would have come through my parents into, you know, all the children. But it wasn't just my parents. There was many parents like that throughout the world. There's polio came into it. One of my brothers had polio when he was a kid. He did then go on to play rugby for England. However, that shows the spirit of that human, that soul. But yeah, the anxiety came through. So, and I didn't realize that until recently. I didn't really know all of this stuff until very recently, because my mum and dad never talked about it. So there's an element of that anxiety was within my childhood. Didn't know it. Then there was some bullying elements that came along, and bullying is one of the things which is horrible. And there's pockets of bullying that I've seen throughout my life up until sort of recently, really, in the last sort of 10 years or so.
As an adult
and as a child. And I think really it's possible that I was if you go into the sort of the less human side of it and the more sort of soulful side of it, you know, did I attract these things? And yeah, you could argue that. That's perhaps a conversation for another day, but we don't really know what goes on inside us until we have to strip everything away and start to look at it. There's an element of, you know, you could point the finger and blame it on others. There's an element of looking at the past and wishing it was different. None of that's going to help. Okay, you can sit there for a minute and wallow in it and sort of say, well, it wasn't my fault, or whatever you want to choose to do. But actually, that's not the point. The point is recognizing it, looking at that thing that you've just uncovered and saying, yes, that did happen. That was done to me. It was done by me, whichever. I'm going to put that down now and let that go. I don't want to carry that anymore. And then look towards the future. And that then becomes the journey from the past, even the historical past, taking you forward, getting to the point where you find some acceptance. The dog wants to go out. And you go. No doubt be back in 5 minutes. But you get to that point of looking towards the future then. Hopefully you've been able to strip things back to reach that point of actually realizing, and in my case, realizing, actually, what does Paul Wain, who is Paul Wain? What does he want to do? It's a really hard question for blokes. Who am I? Am I an engineer? Well, yeah, I was an engineer. I did that as a job, but that's not actually who I am. I am the person, the soul, the spirit behind that. I was a rugby player. Yes, I'm a rugby player, but that's not who I am. It was just part of the experience of life, which if you go into that sort of slightly spooky side of things, that slightly soulful or spiritual side of things, the experience of life is what it's all about. Why we're here, if you like, if you want to call it why we're here. But actually, the soul behind that is who you are.
Why does it think it's taken men a little bit longer to come to that point? Just through your experience in working with guys.
Because we meant to be strong and man up.
Right. Okay.
Don't cry, big boys don't cry, or whatever. You know, any of that sort of nonsense, really. You know, stiff upper lip if you want to. You know, in this we have in the UK this stiff upper lip approach. I imagine when my mum and dad lost their child, there was no counselling, there was no talking about it. It would have been swept under the carpet and suppressed, and let's have another child soon or whatever, you know. So yeah, for men, it's that sort of how we're meant to be, how we should be. I hate that word "should" because it's sort of, it's other people's opinions of you, that you are sort of, well, my dad told me this, you know, but really, I do remember, I think this was part of our first conversation. It was my dad that told me I wanted to be an engineer. And you know, at the time, I didn't know what an engineer was, but my dad told me I wanted to be one. At the time, I actually wanted to be a BBC cameraman, which is quite bizarre that you and I have connected through this. But and I've continued with photography my whole life. You know, I love capturing images. Would my life have been different? You know, it doesn't matter. It is where it is. But yes, that male thing of manning up, keeping it quiet, don't talk about these, you know, these feelings. Don't talk about that stuff that you did. You know, don't talk about any bullying. Don't talk about any abuse. That type of thing. It'll go away or whatever. It doesn't. You know, you've got to face it. You've got to get it out the box. Deal with it. The judgment. We talked about judgment a couple of times here. Fear of being judged. The fear of failure.
Being vulnerable, fear of showing your vulnerabilities.
That is huge. To be vulnerable,
as a male particularly. Yeah,
to shed a tear is oh gosh, you know, don't shed a tear. That's awful. Actually, it's great. I've done it many a time now. To be fair, as have a number of people at Andy's Man Club that I've come across. And you know what? Nobody laughs or giggles or anything like that. You know, people will pat you on the shoulder or whatever and say, "Do you know what? Thanks for sharing that." It's massive. So yeah, why don't guys do it? Because of that historical, judgmental. Don't be vulnerable. Don't show your vulnerability. I know that through industry and through rugby, if anybody can sort of find a little crack to sort of take the mickey and wind you up, you know, that becomes a thing. So you become really defensive. You make sure there are no cracks in your armor, which is fine. That's industry. That's life. However, you then need to find a safe space to be able to talk, because life goes on anyway. You know, life is not all unicorns and rainbows. It's there's shitty stuff that goes on too. So yeah, let find some space to talk. Find a friend. Find a coach. Find a therapist. It doesn't really matter what you find. Find what's right for you is the important thing. Through the work that I do, I think you do connect with people, and it can be male or female. You can connect with people that really want to connect with you. Now, some people will not find this message helpful at all, and that's 100% fine. And I would really love to think that some people do find this message helpful. Somebody somewhere you will be able to share with, and it's huge.
So, Paul, because I know, although you called yourself Reiki for men, it's not I mean, you're offering more than Reiki, or you're not really offering Reiki anymore, are you? It's a different process you're using.
It's a great question. 30 years ago, I got introduced to Reiki, which probably at the time, 30 odd years ago, was quite a niche thing to go to find, really, to come across. But it really touched me. It really connected with me, and I made a friend out of the Reiki master that I went to, Patricia Cummings, Um, and it was great. And I helped other, I did Reiki with other people at that time. I did my Reiki too, and went on to do Reiki with other people. And then it sort of disappeared with time. I let it go for 10, 15 years or so. And of recent times, it's come back into my life again. And I initially thought, gosh, I need to continue with the Reiki because the Reiki is really good. But then I found my coach. So I thought, coaching's good. And with the coach and with the Reiki, we did some meditation. Meditation's really good. So I was sort of going off on tangents because all of this stuff, it was like a feast. All this stuff started to come into my life when I showed a bit of vulnerability, wanted to open up a bit more. And so now I'm sort of in the throes of, there's a local chiropractic clinic here in Dundee, and I've been doing little bits of work with them in a sort of meditative type way. And it's through doing that I thought, actually, the way I want to take myself forward with this, yes, I would like to focus on blokes, because I think men's mental health is something that's going to go on for a long time yet. And I don't know when it'll finish. It might never finish, but we will take it forward and to help blokes to talk and what have you in that safe space is going to be great for them. But I thought for myself, I would really love to take what I do forward as a combination of meditation, Reiki, and coaching. Because I think it really comes down to the limitations of words, of language. If I say to somebody, let's meditate, what they think of meditation, and I've come across this a few times, what they think of meditation is potentially not, it may be different to that, for them. I'd like to use the analogy of Where's Wally? The puzzle game, Where's Wally?
Yeah.
Not everybody does, and maybe I'm showing my age a wee bit, but I look at the photograph of Where's Wally, and I think that is what's going on inside everybody's head. That is. And so when you eventually, Wally is you. You could call it Wainy. Let's call it Where's Wainy. Let's bring it back to something personal for me, if you like. All the stuff that's going on around inside you, that's going on inside your head. Now, meditation, all it does is allows you to sort of slowly come and find Wainy. And when you get to that
noise,
sorry,
all that noise around you, otherwise, all that interference,
and it is interference, and it is a distraction from who you really are inside. So the coaching is great because that can ask questions, that can sort of look at Wainy and say, right, Wainy, who are you? What do you want to do? And that's a really hard question to answer for a lot of people. Some people can quite easily, I want to be this, I want to do that. But actually, who are you behind all of that? So that's the Wainy bit. But the meditation does help to, so does the coaching. James does this as well with me. You strip away all the other distractions which are going on around you from your past or from your thoughts or whatever to get back to the core of you. Meditation, it can do that. And meditation could be as simple as sitting in the garden and just listening to the birds. Yeah. And for 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be more than that. I have a motorbiking friend through Andy's Man Club. And he was very much like, I can't meditate. I've tried meditating. I just get all the stuff comes into my head. The shopping lists, the things you've got to do that afternoon or whatever. Yeah. Immediately you become still. It allows all these other screaming voices to sort of say, I want a bit of your time. I want a bit of your head. And you're not going to do it in 5 minutes, but you'll do it over time. But for this motorbiking friend, I said to him, well, when you're out on your bike, and he's probably a little bit, he's maybe 10 years younger than me. When you're out on your bike and you're just loving that feeling, and you're just floating along, you're feeling the wind, you're feeling the temperature, you're feeling the bike, you're loving the stuff around you. that can be meditation. And
the
so
moment is the moment, isn't it?
it's coming back into this moment and just finding. I bet this guy connects with himself when he's out on his bike. So that's the thing. And the Reiki, combining the Reiki with it, Reiki is all about sort of the intention of the energy that's around you, basically. And so I can incorporate that by the intention of. I would never, when I'm doing a session with a person, I don't want to focus on me at all, and it's actually quite difficult. It's quite a funny thing doing this live because I'm talking a little bit about my journey. That's not what I do. I want to talk about other people's journey, but I know that people need to connect. They need to sort of feel who I am to see if to get some understanding.
I think ultimately with men it is connection, isn't it? That's it's that intimate connection with other men. I mean, But I mean, you need to connect more than just on that superficial rugby level, blah blah. And of course, there's strong friendships between men, but another layer, let's say.
Without a doubt, yeah. And for men, that is massive. It really is, to be able to do that. The moment, I'll come back to this thing about the moment. There's two things about the moment. The moment that I talked about earlier of when a guy that little spark comes on and he feels a connection and he feels as though he wants to share stuff. That on many occasions I've come across people that have said, I've never said this to anybody else before, but 40 years ago, such and such happened. And they've felt shame and guilt for that 40 years, which is, it is what it is. Yeah. But the moment that they actually realize that they can say that is fantastic. The other thing is, which you just touched on a little bit, the meditation of the moment. This moment is all we've got. We do not have tomorrow yet. And what happened 5 minutes ago at the start of this live is gone. We can't change any of that. This moment is it. So the meditation comes back to this moment. The coaching looks at this moment and sees where you are and where you want to get to. The Reiki looks at the intent of all of that and the energy that's around you, all the things, the changes that you need to make within that energy that's around you, that is you. And so combining them and taking that forward is what I love to do. The more men that
moment, that's life changing. It's always in the moment.
Always. It's that opening door. You walk out through a door. One of my meditation sessions, personal meditation sessions, it took me back to this "Am I worthy?" moment that I touched on earlier. And I realized sometime, I'm going to guess, but say around about 5 or 6 years old, I was put in a room by one of the bullies, and the door was closed, and I'd been in that room ever since until I can't remember, maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, but it's that moment of realizing. Then, within that moment, you can say, actually, I don't want to be in this room anymore. And you open the door. You actually have the power to change those things, but it's in that moment. You can grab that door handle in that moment and open that door and walk through into the space that's beyond that.
It's always that you say that also, Paul, in terms of power, because I'm also thinking, in society we associate this macho power image, right? But actually, the real power that's not the power at all. The real power is being able to look at yourself and realize you can open up, the power to open yourself up to your truth and who you are.
You put that beautifully, actually. We do. James talks about empowerment, and lots of people do that. Getting back to that place of realizing that you have the power to open the door, and it isn't a power in a, I'm going to conquer the world.
Yeah.
But it is a power that you allowed to be taken away from you, and you can actually take that power back, become empowered. And it's through the clarity is huge as well. Having that clarity, once you've gone beyond these first few stages and you realize you can actually be vulnerable, you know, there are safe spaces, you then start to look for the clarity. It comes back to the where's Wally as well, you know, the mess that's going on around you is there, it's in everybody's head. But to gain clarity about where you are and who you are, to take that and, you know, to become empowered, is massively life-changing. And for some people, Andy's Man Club is one of the things where I've come across a few guys who've thought about suicide, attempted suicide a number of times, perhaps when they were younger, perhaps when they're older, and they've not, obviously they've not gone through with it because they wouldn't be there, but to see them, to take back that little pinch of, actually I can change things here. And actually,
forgiveness really as well, isn't it? I mean, do you know what I mean? It's,
say that again, sorry.
The power, in a way, instead of defense, it's forgiveness. It's the power to forgive yourself, ultimately.
Forgiveness, yeah. Forgiveness is massive. It is one of the things which, once you've asked your primary question, am I, and in my case, it's am I worthy? The resolution of that comes through forgiveness, and it is forgiving yourself, because we will have all done daft things, but also we would have done daft things to other people. And you know what? That's happened and it's done. Forgive yourself for it. But these are stages on the journey. Yeah. And for a bloke to think, why should I forgive that person, or why should I forgive myself because I did a really bad thing, or they did a really bad thing, or whatever. You've got to go. It's another stepping stone on that journey, is the forgiveness stepping stone, and it is very, very liberating to be able to forgive yourself for stuff that you've done, stuff that has gone on in your life, even stuff that you like. You know, I've looked at my parents recently and stuff that they've done, and I would love to think that they forgave themselves for allowing that child to go to the hospital. I would love to think they did. I don't know whether they did or not, and they're gone now and I can't ask them. But forgive yourself now, forgive yourself in this moment, because it's all there is. It's beautiful place to be, is in this moment. I've got an analogy of a tree, actually. Trees. I love trees. It's been a thing from when I was quite young. Trees come in all shapes and sizes, as do humans. Trees have branches broken off, and you know, some trees get a little bit of disease and what have you. But none of us actually judge that tree. We just look at its beauty, and it can be all gnarled and ugly and horrible and had a really tough time on a hilltop or whatever. But we look at it and we rejoice in the shape of it, its gorgeousness. We don't judge the tree for what, you know, the hardship it went through. And yet we do it to ourselves. We look at all our warts and all. One of the stories on my website is warts and all, and it is a thing. We judge those warts, that single little blemish. There's massive, in my personal sort of view, there is massive. We're all imperfect, but that in itself is perfection, because we're meant to be imperfect. We're meant to have blemishes. Don't judge us on one wart, you know.
Acceptance, isn't it? It's just accepting.
It is. That's part of James's teaching, is allowance, acceptance, understanding, meaning, and love, and going towards love. And for blokes to talk about love is really quite sort of difficult sometimes. The opposite of love being fear. So, you know, you either live in a place of love or you live in a place of fear, and you'll make decisions based on that. Yeah, it is great. I'm just actually looking at. I have a chart on my wall that and I do a lot of mind mapping, and because I think that's how my head works. Sort of things sprout of different places and grow arms and legs. So it's not a linear thing at all. It just works for me. Um, but yes, I think as I've gone through my journey, and as I'm helping others, the helping others bit has come through the contribution. In the past, my contribution has been in industry, and now I'd like to think my contribution is going to be in humanity. Um, so yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. I just wanted to ask if anyone's got any questions for Paul. It's been an incredible conversation, Paul, listening to what you've been through, and also talking about yourself, which is quite brave, and really, really respect and value that you brought that to the conversation today, because I know that it's always when we talk about ourselves where, as you said, that's what creates connection with others, isn't it? It shows us that we've been through similar things. Really, we're not really that different from each other. So I'm just going to see if anybody's got any questions down here. Got the Magnus, which is lovely. Adam saying thank you for sharing, Paul.
You're welcome.
And he was also saying presence is important for all of us. Quite a few different people joined, and he also says you're inspiring me to actually start some men's groups.
That would be brilliant. I know there are many about that have started. I think there's one called Men's Shed or Man Shed or something, which is great. I think it helps guys to do things as well as talk. I'm not entirely sure. Andy's Man Club that I'm part of is very much focused on. It's such a simple thing. You start the conversation by talking about how your week's gone. And if you've got anything else, if you've got anything you want to share or whatever, there's 5 simple questions which are asked during the 2-hour session. Everybody gets a chance to talk or not to talk or just to listen or whatever, to turn up or to go away. But there is respect there for each other, and
it's never jumping in at the deep end. That's just what I'd like to say to everybody. It's not like you have to go in and I say this for everyone, men and women, going in and share your whole life story. It's not like that. It's you just go if you feel like going, go share something if you want to share it. It's incremental healing.
Absolutely. Well, it's been an incremental descent into the dark space. So it is an incremental ascent out of the dark space towards the light. It's that incremental thing is quite difficult because we all want an answer now. We all want a solution today. I go to yoga, and I go to a guy I go to, John Kagi. And I've probably been going to yoga for about 10 years now. I actually wish I'd gone to yoga about 30, 40 years ago when I was playing rugby. I think it would have helped. I wouldn't have to go to the chiropractor now. But however, Yoga John, I remember after a few sessions, I said, I can actually feel a little bit of a difference, John. He says, Paul, it's taken you 50 odd years to get to this point. You are not going to get away from it in 5 minutes in one session. It is just it is going to that sort of lifestyle of, it's the lifestyle of vulnerability and looking towards the good rather than and letting go of the crap.
Different perspective. Yeah. Got Johar here who says a very frank and honest discussion on mental health as well, and I've got a lovely follower, Yogi Scott, who's actually a yoga teacher, a male yoga teacher on here. Well, I know he does yoga on the beach somewhere in
Brilliant.
South
Yeah.
England, which is lovely. And Adam saying again, this absolutely really resonates. And lots of wonderful people who have joined. So,
Do you know, that's actually
your initial question of whether or not this will be useful, I think we've answered that. Very useful.
well, that's not, and actually, I feel quite touched by that. There's I have a friend that I work with, and she quite often sort of laughs at me because I get quite touched at things. You know, when people share their vulnerabilities, I do get quite touched. And I'd love to think that all I am is a conduit for helping people to get to the other side of where they need to be. It's nice, the yoga. I have a number of, well, at the moment I have two different yoga teachers, Yoga Lindsay and Yoga John. Yeah, Lindsay Stark Yoga. She has a very meditative yoga. John, being a bloke, he has a very stretching yoga. And they both contribute differently. It's like, you know, if she said to somebody,
Yeah.
you know, would you like to meditate? They have a version of it. Would you like to do yoga? They have a version of it. But there are loads of different ways of practicing it. And I would encourage everybody to find what is right for them. Just get to a point where you can actually talking and listening in a non-judgmental, safe space. Do that, and maybe you will get to rainbows and unicorns by doing that. But no, life's not like that. There is mess around that.
As you're saying that, I was just thinking in my head, it starts with children as well, doesn't it? Because, you know, it's like you're not allowed to cry. Well, you know, some people say, oh, you don't cry, you forget about it, move on. Well, again, you've stuffed in your feelings, you know.
Yeah.
Even that small incident that will then maybe carry with you for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm. The small bullying,
in some way, that's not healthy for you.
It isn't. There was a 5-minute incident when I was about 5 or 6 years old, where a young family member and his friend held me on the ground and were trying to stuff a metal rod through my head and telling me I wasn't worthy. Now, that took about 5 minutes for that all to happen, but that's lasted 50 years, 60 years. That until I found a place, until I uncovered that, because I'd just shoved it down the side, and it was through this, and I uncovered this, and I thought, bloody hell, that's been sitting there, and actually, one side and say, you could go into all the sort of spooky side and let the angels take it away, or whatever you want to talk about, whichever works for you, but let that go, let it go again, and move on from that moment. Recognize it for what it is, allow it for being what it was. I mean, some people go through some awful childhood things. You're still not going to be able to change them, you know, even if you look at them now. So at some point, you've got to allow them to have been and let them go. Hard, really is. Some people take many years to working through this sort of stuff to get to the other side. But yeah, it's childhood stuff is huge. I would say and I've nowhere, you know, near the vast experience that some people have in this field. But in my experience, which has been with probably many dozens of people, childhood stuff, it just lasts and lasts and lasts. And even the good childhood stuff, there's going to be some crap in there as well. And for whatever reason, we tend to focus on the crap. And, you know, that's a human condition, I think. It's the guy that played, oh God, that film with Paris, what was his name? The oh God, English actor. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he was talking about this thing about, yeah, I've done a lot of bad things in my life, and for many years I I used to focus on the bad things, but I started to realize actually I've done a lot of good things too. And it is this acceptance, this allowing it to be what it is. Letting the bad stuff go. Don't focus on that. Look at it and let it go. Deal with it. If you don't, definitely. If you don't deal with it, it'll stay there. So deal with it. James is quite brutal. James McCourt is quite brutal in some of his the way he gets you to deal with stuff. But some people need that brutality and sort of being shown what it is for matter of factly rather than sort of wrapping it in cotton wool. Some people need that. Some people need it wrapped in cotton wool, and some people need to sit with it for a little while longer because it's become part of them before they let it go. But at some point, you've got to let it go. This stuff. Men, yeah, we're pretty useless at it because we stuff it down. But there is answers to it. There is places to go with this stuff.
And it's changing. It's changing. It really is.
Oh gosh, yes. I would still think it would be difficult at the rugby club bar.
Yeah.
But having said that, look at Gareth Thomas on the Welsh rugby team coming out as gay. What a fantastic message that has allowed other people to release whatever they need to release. And that was at a top level rugby club stuff. What a brave he needed.
Sorry, yeah.
What a brave bloke, and he needed to do that for himself, and he's probably done it for many dozens of other people now as well, which is brilliant. And that's only one aspect of humanity. There are many others.
We're all part on this journey, soul evolution for humanity.
Yeah, I'm actually really touched by the people. You mentioned some of the folks there that said, it's been a lovely share. I'm actually quite touched with that, and I'd like to thank people that have responded to this. And I hope in some small way that they are able, and you mentioned one guy that's talked about, doing a man's group. If he can take that forward, that's fantastic. It's just another stepping stone. Let's keep that stepping stone going. Let's keep walking along the stepping stone. Don't stop halfway. Sorry?
I said definitely. And Paul, you're a great leader. You're a great teacher.
Gosh.
And I think you're going to really, you're going to walk this path with many others. You're going to lead. You're going to lead. You're a great leader.
Thank you for that.
Wonderful energy. People feel safe in your space, and you bring so much maturity and wisdom to your aura, to what you do.
Thank you very much for that, Jade. That's lovely.
Oh, you're very welcome. And my battery's going, right? So that's always my cue to have to.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you, Jade, and thank you everyone else for listening. I've loved that. I have, just before your battery fades, I have been asked by a number of people that can't watch this, if it does go on, if they can watch it on feedback or
oh yeah, so when I go back now, I'm going to post it so that it's just always on replay.
Fantastic. I'll let folks know because there have been a few that wanted to. I appreciate your time.
Valuable, very valuable conversation.
I appreciate the opportunity to do this. Thank you, Jade.
You're very welcome. And thank you for everyone joining. I'm really happy that you joined us and have been part of this lovely space this morning energetically. We're all in all different parts of England, maybe elsewhere as well. And it's great that we've all joined in together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great Sunday. Yeah. And I'll put all of Paul's details in under the post so anyone can connect with him. It's all there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye. Happy weekend. Happy Sunday. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.